Local authority doesn't need special rack chamber. Portable screw fits desk. Jail cell, ship cabin, target's hands, same hands used to work, write, pray, fight. Victim faces clear loss. Cooperate today or lose function tomorrow. The survival lesson. Torture's persistence, despite weak reliability, comes from speed, certainty, loud display of authority, even when truth breaks. Understanding this trade-off helps recognize when interrogation systems prioritize compliance over accuracy. Number 4. Manacles. Historic Royal Palaces describes John Gerard, Jesuit priest, Tower of London, April 1597, during intense Catholic persecution fears. Manacles method, suspension by wrists in iron restraints. Technique aims to extract information and names, turning prisoner into map of suspected ties. Hanging by wrists drives pain into shoulders, chest, nerves. Victim faces narrowing choice. Keep silence, risk lasting damage, or talk risk betraying others. The survival lesson. Tools like this appear when states fear hidden networks more than open enemies. Once fear rules, torture targeting network connections follows. Gerard's case teaches resistance strategy. He endured manacles, escaped tower, documented torture in memoir that delegitimized persecutors. Strategic endurance, combined with later testimony, can expose regime brutality. Number 5. Pillory. Britannica defines as punishment device locking head and hands, leaving person visible for public humiliation and abuse. Public peace matters hands, cruelty to regular people, jeers, filth, thrown objects. Authorities want deterrence through making shame contagious. Person stuck in pillory loses status in real time. Customers vanish. Trust collapses. Marriage prospects shift. The survival lesson. Public punishments thrive where communities police themselves, because shame works like cheap enforcement. Understanding this helps recognize when systems recruit populations into inflicting punishment, creating collective guilt that makes opposition harder. Recognizing when you're being recruited into complicity helps refuse participation. Number 6. Stocks. History Extra describes stakes. Medieval person fears jail, fines, or public humiliation in stocks. Uses social exposure, weather, casual cruelty as sentence. Hours turn into public show. People stare, mock, threaten. In cold, numbness and swelling. In heat, dehydration and sun. Person loses control over basic dignity. The survival lesson. Stocks need little tech, almost no staffing. Create visible power ladder. This reveals why certain punishment forms persist, not because they're most effective, but because they're most economical. Low-cost enforcement mechanisms outlast expensive ones. Number 7. Strappado. Britannica places this among real Inquisition methods. Bind hands behind back, lift by rope, let body weight do damage. Pit and pendulum authenticity discussion points to strappado as known method, suggesting pendulum tail may come from misunderstanding real practices. Interrogator can lift, pause, drop, lift again, add weights. Each change offers new bargain. Shoulders and nerves carry negotiation. The survival lesson. Portability matters. Beam, rope, pulley. No huge machine required. This teaches that most dangerous torture isn't most elaborate, but most accessible. When authorities can torture anywhere with basic materials, you can never feel safe. Security comes from preventing isolation with hostile authorities. Number 8. Torture boot. Science Museum Group holds iron boot dated 1501 to 1600, describing form called foot roasting, where boiling oil or water held in boot during torture. Metal holds heat, heat bites flesh, victim faces countdown measured in pain. History Extra treats boot-style methods as part of wider stretched, crushed, broken punishments. The survival lesson. Boots terrify because they attack mobility itself. Lose foot function, lose status, income, escape. Threats targeting fundamental capabilities, movement, manual dexterity, speech are more coercive than threats to life alone. Understanding what specific torture method attacks helps you recognize what authorities most want to control. Number 9. Garrote. Britannica defines as strangling device iron collar fixed to post, tightened by screw until asphyxiation. Mechanical detail shows why officials like it. Predictable force, less struggle, fewer messy surprises than botched hanging. Method looking efficient feels easier for officials to accept, even though ending stays same. Garrote turns killing into procedure. Position neck, turn screw, end movement. The survival lesson. States search for execution methods appearing controlled and standardized because public disorder makes power look weak. Understanding this helps recognize when authorities prioritize appearance of legitimacy over actual justice. Number 10. Breaking wheel. History Extra frames medieval punishment as system meant to intimidate watchers because fear spreads faster than law books. Wheel answers with visibility, victim endures, blows shattering limbs, aftermath can stay on display, turning one person's suffering into long public lesson. In world with uneven literacy and state reach, wheel works like billboard. The survival lesson. One execution tries to pay for itself by scaring many into obedience. This deterrence math shows up across centuries in many forms. Understanding how spectacular violence serves economic purposes, achieving compliance from thousands through example making of few helps you recognize when you're witnessing theater designed to control populations. So what patterns distinguish myths from reality? First, real torture leaves documentation. Court orders, legal inventories, payment records, survivor testimony. Fabrications thrive in museums but fade in archives. Second, technological anachronisms expose fakes. Coiled springs in medieval devices, engineering beyond period capacity, these are tells. Third, provenance beats plausibility. Chain of custody, dated inventories, clear geographic origin matter, more than convincing story. Fourth, source criticism reveals agenda. Who first describes device? When? Why? What do they gain from specific narrative? Fifth, Victorian era created torture, museum, industry, manufacturing medieval devices to satisfy moral superiority market. Understanding this historical con helps recognize contemporary equivalents. Sixth, portability and economy explain which real devices persisted. Thumbscrews, strappado, stocks required minimal investment but achieved coercion. Seventh, public devices recruited populations into inflicting punishment, creating collective guilt harder to oppose than institutional violence alone. Eighth, different torture engineering served different purposes. Quick confession. Thumbscrews, prolonged deterrence. Network mapping, manacles. Mobility destruction, boots. Ninth, strategic endurance combined with later testimony. John Gerard can delegitimize persecutors by exposing brutality. 10th, fiction shapes historical memory more powerfully than documentation. Poe's pendulum, Norse sagas' blood eagle, Polybius's iron aiga literary sources create historical narratives people accept as fact. Subscribe to Medieval Survival Skills, because learning to distinguish historical reality from profitable fiction trains you for broader critical thinking. The Victorians manufactured medieval barbarity to validate their civilization. Modern systems employ similar tactics, creating false histories that justify present arrangements. When you understand how torture narratives get manufactured, you recognize the pattern in other historical claims. Who benefits from this story? What documentation exists beyond repetition? What technological anachronisms suggest later invention? These questions protect you from manipulation across all domains. The Iron Maiden teaches you to demand receipts. The chastity belt teaches you to question narratives that perfectly match contemporary anxieties. The pear of anguish teaches you to check if components match timeline. The blood eagle teaches you that feasible is not equal to proven. And the real devices teach equally crucial lessons. The rack teaches that bureaucratic violence leaves bureaucratic evidence. Scavenger's daughter teaches that engineering reveals purpose. Thumbscrews teach that portability determines persistence. Manacles teach that network targeting torture follows fear of hidden connections. Pillory and stocks teach that recruiting populations into punishment creates collective guilt. Strapato teaches that simplest tools are often most dangerous because they're most accessible. Boots teach that threatening fundamental capabilities is more coercive than threatening life. Garrote teaches that states prioritize appearance of legitimacy. Wheel teaches that spectacular violence serves economic purposes through deterrence math. These lessons apply whenever you encounter historical claims about violence, oppression, or control. Victorian torture museums manufactured moral superiority through false medieval narratives. Modern systems do the same, creating historical villains, real or imagined, to justify contemporary violence. Learning to spot the con protects you from both historical manipulation and present propaganda. When someone shows you a torture device and says this is how they did it, demand. Where are the court records? What's the provenance? What technological anachronisms exist? Who benefits from this narrative? When examining claims about how past societies operated, apply same skepticism to claims about medieval barbarity as you would to claims about medieval utopia. The Victorian Torture Museum owner in 1888 profited from manufacturing medieval horror. The Iron Maiden he commissioned from Birmingham workshop served his economic interests while letting audiences feel morally superior to imagined past. Today's equivalents manufacture historical narratives serving contemporary purposes. Sometimes that's actual museums perpetuating Victorian fabrications. Sometimes it's political movements creating false histories justifying present violence. Sometimes it's entertainment industry selling simplified past, confirming modern prejudices. The pattern recognition skills you develop distinguishing real rack from fake Iron Maiden transfer to recognizing contemporary manipulations. Every time someone uses this as how they did it in the past, to justify this is how we should do it now, or look how far we've come, apply the critical framework. Documentation, provenance, technological consistency, who benefits? This matters for medieval survival because understanding how torture narratives function reveals how power structures use fear, both fear of torture itself and fear of being associated with barbaric past. The Victorians needed medieval savagery to validate their progress. Their torture museums weren't historical education, they were moral justification for Victorian society. Modern systems employ identical tactics. By learning to deconstruct torture narratives, recognizing when devices are Victorian inventions, understanding what documentation real torture produces, identifying who profits from specific historical claims, you develop immunity to manipulation through false history. Part C's. Subscribe to Medieval Survival Skills, because the ability to distinguish myth from reality, to demand documentation, to recognize technological anachronisms, to identify who benefits from specific narratives, these are survival skills applicable across all domains, where history gets weaponized for contemporary purposes. The Iron Maiden, standing in that 1888 London museum, was 3 months old, but sold as 373 years old. That 370-year lie served Victorian industrialists, museum owners, moral reformers, and audiences wanting to feel superior to imagined barbaric past. Learn to spot the lie, demand the receipts, check the timeline, identify the beneficiaries, and remember, the most dangerous torture isn't the most painful. It's the most mythologized. Because myths about torture serve power more reliably than actual torture ever could. The Iron Maiden that never existed controls more people through fear than the rack that did. Understanding why protects you from both historical manipulation and contemporary propaganda dressed as historical fact. Remember the pattern, recognize the signs, demand the evidence, and survive.